Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we proudly present our spectacular show of podcast magic and imagination full of Disney wonder, news, and pop culture. It's the Main Street Electrical Podcast with Jenn Dave and David Dollar.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, Dave.
It's the Main Street Electrical Podcast. I'm back. I can talk. Last week, it was really rough. I was really having a problem for like 3 days.
Yeah, you were.
Like this for like 3 straight days. It was awful.
Hey, I have never heard you sound
It was so bad.
so sick. And I've known you for several years, and I have never.
And it wasn't even that I was all sick. It's just, well, I mean, I was, but like,
you were sick.
I sounded worse than I actually was. I just couldn't talk very well. It was just, I pushed through that podcast on Sunday night last week, and I barely made it to the end. And then by Tuesday, it was awful. And so it's all good, though.
No.
We're all here. And we are here inviting in, maybe this is a once a year thing, because about this time last year, he joined us to talk about some of the same
I feel like
stuff.
it was.
He is the grand poobah of podcasting, the podfather, as we call him, of course, the king of the Golaverse, the Geek Out Loudiverse. That is Mr. Steve Glosson. Hello, Steve.
Hello, all. And that's so funny you use the term podfather, because I hear that in so many other circles where, like, they're not about me, but about other different people. So depending on what podcast network you're listening to, or what, it's like, this person's the podfather, this person. So I just consider myself a has-been in the podcasting world.
Well, Jen, let me tell you about Steve here. He's done it so long and gotten such a good audience. He's to that point now where he can just release an episode whenever he wants, on whatever day he wants, and people follow him.
Nice.
We're not there yet. I mean, we have to kind of stick to a schedule.
We're not there.
But when you get to the point where you're like, it's Tuesday, I haven't podcasted in 2.5 weeks, I'll do it again. Whatever.
Listen,
sure. Here's a 3-hour episode.
When you start out that way, that's what your listeners come to expect. So it started that way back in the day. So that's how
hilarious.
Yeah. It's only been 17 years.
Only been 17.
Yeah.
I've only podcasted for 13 years. So yeah. You're definitely way ahead of me. And Jen's somewhere in there, I guess, maybe 8-9 years, whatever. But we have figured out, though, that the two of us together have gotten close to 1,000 episodes under our belt.
Wow.
So yeah, not bad at all. Jenn, how did you Disney this week?
Oh gosh. This week, what did I do? Oh, I got my plan together for my dining for October. Yes.
October. That's right, because you're going in October.
Yes.
Nice.
And I'm going down a couple days early. So I had to get my plan together. I can't book just yet. I got like another week, but I had to like get on the calendar, and because let's be real, I forget half the time. And then I'm like, I wake up at 10. I'm like, oh, oops. Okay. No, I wake up at like 7:30, but really you can start booking at 6 and I don't get it done. And then I'm like, oh, well, here we are.
Of course. So Steve, how did you Disney this week?
I'm doing this podcast.
Nice. That works. That's always a good fallback answer for anybody. So yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because we will be talking a little Disney in just a moment. Well, I and Jen, and I've mentioned this on the show too, I have sales goals for myself. And when I met a certain goal, I have 2 large Lego sets that I purchased earlier this year. And one of them I got to put together because I met a good sales goal. And finally I met my second sales goal, and I've started. The first one was my Star Destroyer Lego set. So it's the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi, whatever. So it's really cool. And then my second one is my indoor diorama, which I just started. And I'm so excited because I got those speeders on it, all the little leaves and everything. And I mean, that's like 8 bags of Legos and stuff. But I'm so pumped, so excited. Because I have myself a Lego shelf now in my room that I built, and now I'm able to stock it with Legos and stuff. And my lovely wife.
You never showed us the finished product, by the way.
You know what? I'll have to. I mean, I'll post that on when I do this, when I put the show stuff up on Instagram.
Okay.
I will put a picture.
You got
to
send us.
But also, my lovely wife has mentioned about me buying myself a present, and I don't know if I will or not. I don't know. I thought about the Dark Falcon, which has got the Jar Jar Binks, Darth Vader little figure, but it's kind of pricey, so I may not. But anyway, yeah, I'm a Lego fan. What can I say? So we're gonna talk.
I love Lego. Lego will get you. You can get. It's easy to kind of get addicted to that whole process.
It really is. Well, the hard thing is getting addicted to like the $10 and $15 and $20 sets, because they're very small, and it's like I can throw $20 down and get whatever.
Right.
And I've been working through some of mine over the course of this summer. Like every couple of days, I'll put something else together, because at one time I had 19 sets under the desk ready to go.
Wow.
And so now I've got like 13. And so just putting the brick heads and the small pieces together, whatever, because you can get them on clearance. You can find them all along. And some of them I've had for like 2 years. They're just bigger. But yeah, I have a Lego shelf to put them on. So now we're rolling. Now we're going. So we're going to talk a little bit, however, about Marvel today. Of course, D23 is coming up, and Jen and Heather, the Moana mom, talked last week about some of their predictions and everything last week, what they thought might happen. And I go along with all of that. We're thinking, obviously, I think the big thing is going to be Disney will announce a Villain's Land beyond Big Thunder Mountain. And then, of course, they'll announce some new ships and I mean, I can't really speak to what they're going to do about Paris and Hong Kong and stuff, but I think big things are coming. We know about Disneyland Forward, which is a major project at Disneyland, which hasn't got much publicity.
I do think we'll get details, like we said, and I figured that you would agree with that.
Yeah, I think so. Steve, any thoughts on D23? Do you have any thoughts on what Disney might announce?
I don't know. Like, I'm always interested with obviously with the Marvel and the Star Wars side of things. As far as the park stuff goes, I keep hoping to hear that this Tron 3 thing is underway and is definitely going to happen. That's always my hope, is that we're going to get a new chapter in the Tron saga.
Is it Tron Ares, I think, is the name,
something like that,
given name that they're talking about. So nice. Yeah, that's I'm hoping we get some movie stuff. Although I don't know that would have come at Comic-Con or it's likely to come at D23. I don't know. But yeah, I would love to see more Tron stuff in the parks.
In years past, like if D23 falls, when the years that D23 falls, they would actually, some of those bigger properties would lessen their presence at Comic-Con for D23, like
so that they could announce a detail. That makes sense.
Right. In the past, even I remember there was one year where there was a very small Marvel presence for D23 to put up everything on the big board and what was coming and that sort of thing. That was when they announced Civil War and all that good stuff. So yeah, I don't know, with Tron being a Disney specific thing, and of course you've got the ride that's opened up all over the place. I imagine if there is any news, I'd like to hear some of that.
That would be cool. Yeah. That would be good. Of course, the big news we got at Comic-Con is what we're going to talk about today. Now, they announced that the Fantastic Four, of course, we already had the cast of the Fantastic Four. We now know the title of the movie, The First Steps. And the big thing, the big deal was Robert Downey Jr. coming out, revealing himself as Dr. Doom, which is going to be probably the big bad, which we know the Avengers is coming, the next two Avengers, Doomsday, and I forget the name of the next one.
Well, so Iron Man can't be in Doomsday, right?
Well, we'll talk about that in just a second, but I do. But also Deadpool and Wolverine just came out as well. It's made a ton of money. It's kind of sort of
okay. I am loving the trailers a little bit.
Yes. Well, and let me set this up for the audience who maybe kind of missed some of this. And Steve, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but just as a bird's eye view. 20th Century Fox, they own the rights to X-Men, they own the rights to Fantastic Four, they own the rights to Deadpool and all that. So they made those movies over the course of the last 20 years, all the X-Men movies, the good and bad, Fantastic Four movies, the bad and the bad, and all those movies. Of course, Walt Disney Company bought 20th Century Fox and basically owned those properties, but they made the wise decision to not immediately shove those properties into the MCU. They used Deadpool and Wolverine as kind of a way to kind of bring some of that into the fold. Deadpool and Wolverine, if you haven't seen the movie, it's a very hard R. It's hilarious. I loved it. I thought it was great. It paid homage to a lot of those characters and a lot of those things from 20th Century Fox in a very breaking the fourth wall kind of way, which I thought was a very fitting into the end of that. Basically, the end of the 20th Century Fox universe and all of that. Basically, saying, "Hey, that's the end of that. We're starting over," or whatever. Which brings us to the Fantastic Four. And, now Wolverine is officially in the MCU, I guess, by way of Deadpool and Wolverine, as is Deadpool. So I guess, Steve, the first question is, let's talk Fantastic Four first. What are your thoughts on the Fantastic Four coming in, the first steps? What are we thinking when they announced it, I guess, several months ago in terms of the casting? And what are your thoughts on the Fantastic Four? Which, by the way, one of my favorite Marvel teams. I love the Four. I do.
Listen, the Fantastic Four have been, ever since I first got into comics, been my jam. I love all things Fantastic Four, and have for years and years and years and years. So, I honestly, if you recall, like the whole Fox thing really went down several years ago. Like the whole Disney buyout of some of these properties and IPs and everything. So much so that when I was going to see Infinity War, I think I was talking to my then fiance, now wife. She's my ex fiance, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, she I, she said, what are you expecting? I said, I said this will never happen. I said, but it'd be really cool if at the end of this thing, I said, because I just imagined, because we've got the next Avengers that will happen after this.
Right.
I said, I think the bad guy's going to have to win when this is all said and done at the end of this movie.
Mhm.
And I said, and I think it'd be really, really cool if the post-credit sequence is the skyline of New York, and you see a flare go up into the sky and it burst into a big four. And then you see the silhouette or the back of a guy with a hat on, in a trench coat. And
Right.
everyone who knows that that'd be the thing looking up at that, and just kind of say it's clobbering time, and then boom, black screen. I
Mhm.
said, that'll never happen. I said, but the possibility is there like never before. So I've been waiting on the Fantastic Four to be brought in for that
Since
long.
then.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then of course everyone was, crying for John Krasinski to be Reed Richards. And that happened in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. And so I think everyone kind of thought, well, he'll be Reed Richards then in perpetuity. But no, we got the Mandalorian now as Reed
Right.
Richards. And so that was a little bit of a shock to the system. Here's the thing. There's you want to be hopeful about all these things, and you really want to look forward to them. And in a way I am, because it's the Fantastic Four, but in another way, this is not happening in what we would consider to be the Marvel Cinematic Universe proper. This is happening in the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse.
Right. Right.
And so we're not on an Earth where Thanos snapped half of existence into oblivion. We're not on an Earth um where Tony Stark as Iron Man came to be and all these other things. We're on an Earth that is perpetually stuck in the 1960s
Mhm.
and is kind of a futuristic style. And it's almost kind of a high concept thing for the Fantastic Four. And as much as I enjoyed Tim Story's movies back in the early 2000s, the Fox movies, and as much as I did not enjoy Fan Fanforstic, circa 2000, whenever that was, 15,
Right.
whatever it
Yeah.
was, I just feel I'm concerned this is going to fall somewhere in the middle for me, because I'm just not fired up about the concept. The multiverse concept is not something that has been super appealing to me in the first place.
Mhm.
And using it as a means to kind of, we've got to backdoor the Fantastic Four in, because everyone knows that they're Marvel's first family, that they should have already been around is kind of the idea. Or if they were around, why didn't they help? And there's all these other
Right.
things.
Right.
So this, I guess, is a creative way to kind of get around that. And I'm kind of in a wait and see kind of place with it. There's already been some other news mentioned that I just am not a fan of, the casting of the Silver Surfer and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
They're picking one of the more obscure points of Marvel universes to draw out and have a reason to cast a female as a Silver Surfer, and more power to you. But I have been privy to some leaked test footage that they showed at Comic-Con. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
I have not seen it. No.
It wasn't a trailer, it was test footage that they were showing off. And there's like Invisible Woman, kind of showing their concept for her being invisible and everything. And it's stuff that was shot for the movie, but it wasn't a trailer. And it all ended with Galactus looking through a window, which we can only assume is the Baxter building. And it looked really cool, looked really good. So that kind of fires you up a little
Mhm.
bit, So I don't know. I think that from a creative standpoint and a storytelling standpoint, if they still want everything to be connected as they have, this is kind of the way to do it, especially knowing where we're going with Doomsday and Secret War.
Right, right. Well,
Um,
we'll definitely get to that in a second. I am cautiously optimistic.
right.
It's no secret that I think most people agree that Marvel has had some ups and downs since Infinity War, since Endgame. Even Spider-Man: No Way Home, kind of wrapped some of that up. Some of the movies and shows have been kind of up and down, mostly down for a lot of it. I kind of the opinion of that they've got the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, and that's pretty much it. If they don't nail both of these characters, both of these groups, they don't nail it, then they're done, because there's really no other big heroes to pull from. I mean, they had the luxury of making Guardians of the Galaxy into something out of nothing that nobody knew about, because they had already had all these major characters around them. They can't go out and plunk some like, West Coast Avengers team out of nowhere because there's nothing else to support them, I guess. And so I'm optimistic about it. And I like the way that they're doing it now, because they know that Fantastic Four, you're right, should have been. Why weren't they there to help defeat Thanos, originally? So let's put them in an alternate universe, the multiverse. And again, for the audience who are listening, going, I don't know what you're talking about. The multiverse is a theory in comics, I guess in science, that there are alternative Earths out there somewhere with the same people doing the same thing except varied, like infinite numbers, like infinite numbers of things. Like everything could be exactly the same, except Jen would be wearing a pink shirt instead of a black shirt today. And that's the difference. And somebody comments on the pink shirt later on and does something later with, thinking about a pink shirt that they wouldn't have done with a black shirt. And so that, that's a whole other thing. And so, by putting them in this multiverse, it allows them to say, well, they weren't around, they were in a different universe, which I think was where they're going to go to with Doomsday and with Secret Wars, with the Avengers movies, kind of bringing those characters together. So real quick, can you give a bird's eye view, I guess, of what is the Secret Wars? That's something that I think has been tossed around a lot. And I know about it. I never read the comic series itself. And I think it was early 80s when the first one happened, when all the characters came together. Can you kind of give a brief, just a synopsis of what is the Secret Wars?
I'll be as brief as humanly possible.
I know it's kind of tough, but it's a big deal.
The original Secret Wars was a comic book, was a series that was honestly made to support a toy line from Mattel. They did it.
Not surprising.
Truly. You had DC superheroes. Kenner had DC superheroes, and they were making toys called the Superpowers. And of course, that was based on Super Friends and the Saturday morning cartoon and everything. Well, Marvel wanted to get in on some of that action, and so they got with Mattel, and they did a whole focus group with kids, and they found out that boys like wars and they like secrets, and so they did Secret Wars. And what that original concept is this vast power from beyond the universe gathered all the heroes and all the villains together on a world that this thing created called Battle World. And they basically fought it out, and whichever side won got their heart's desire. So the heroes are fighting to get back home. That's all they want, is to be able to get back home. The villains are fighting because, they're wanting all the selfish things that villains would want. And you have a whole thing in there where Dr. Doom steals the power of this beyond power. They call it the Beyonder, and everything. And then there was a Secret Wars 2 where Beyonder came to Earth. And it was one of the first really big crossovers where it literally stories impacted the main limited series. But back in the 2000, I guess it was 2007, 2008, something like that, maybe a little bit later, 2012, they did Secret Wars again. But what this was all of these universes began to collide into one another. All the different universes of the multiverse began to collide, and as they collided into one another, they were destroying one another. And everything got pared down to two universes: the Marvel universe proper that we know, it's called the 616, and then the Ultimate Universe, where Miles Morales comes from, where there was a whole other line of comics that was launched in the late 90s, early 2000s, with the sole purpose of getting people on board with comics, called the Ultimate line. And they were never supposed to cross over anything. Well, this they did finally. And so there was a big war between these two universes to try, because the whole thing was, we've got to destroy the other universe so this universe survives. And so this big moral conundrum and everything. Well, meanwhile, Doctor Strange realizes we can't win this thing. And so he takes Dr. Doom, of all people, on a celestial journey to obtain godhood, basically, so that when everything is destroyed, Dr. Doom has the godlike power to be able to recreate everything in the image he desires. And so he creates a world called Battle World. And on this world are pieces of all these different universes where different people live. So you have the X-Men 97 part of Battle World, where that cartoon version of those X-Men live. You've got the Marvel Zombie part of Battle World. You've got, all these different things that are going on. But Reed Richards, genius that he is, devised a way for people to survive the destruction of these universes in like this suspended animation bubble. And when it finally shows up on this Battle World, for all these people in there, 5 minutes has passed. For this world, apparently, eons have passed with Doom at the helm, and Doom remembers everything. And he's the only one. And so Reed Richards remembers everything. The people he brings, and it just ends up being a big battle of now, has Doom done the right thing or the wrong thing? And
Right.
and ultimately everything is recreated at the end. But it's it's a war that goes on that the rest of creation, the rest of humanity, no one knew about, because everyone was basically obliterated until the heroes figured out a way to bring everything back. It wasn't a snap like it was with Thanos. It was almost a natural occurrence. There was no enemy to fight. It was a force of nature. And so it's a higher concept than we've all been gathered to fight.
Right.
Which I
Right.
love. The first Secret Wars. It's one of my favorite stories of all time. You get the black suited Spider-Man out of that, which brings about Venom and everything else. You see Doom steal the Beyonder's power, and what he's always after is his own power and that sort of thing. But this was a little bit higher concept, a little more artsy stuff done in some of the crossover stuff and everything. But I think that's kind of the concept they're going for cinematically, is going to be these universes collapsing in on one another and ultimately making one universe. Hardcore comic fans will say, well, that sounds like Crisis on Infinite Earths. It does. And that's kind of one of my issues with it.
Which was a DC concept, kind of the same thing, but different for DC Comics instead of Marvel. So for those of you out there who are still listening, and I'm hoping that you are, because that was a lot of nerddom, and that's okay. That's all right, because I wanted to hear the concept as well, because
Mickey Mouse showed up and made everyone feel good about themselves.
Basically, it's like the House of Mouse now. We got the villains and the and whatever. And so no, I think it's important because this does set up, I think, what may be coming, because I do think that Marvel has kind of, and maybe this is their long-term plan. I'd like to think this is only some of their long-term plan, because some of it's been skewered by different events, especially in terms of, I don't think the multiverse has worked like they wanted to. I think it's just been too much. People have, there's television shows people are watching. I haven't seen a lot of the television shows. I haven't even gone back to watch them. And I'm a hardcore MCU fan. And, the movies weren't great. And so I think a lot of the plans were like, well, these were supposed to be all stellar things that everybody loved. And now that they're not, what do we do? Jonathan Majors was an issue. Of course, he played the character of Kang, which showed up in the series Loki, but he also showed up in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which wasn't a great movie. Jonathan Majors had some major legal issues, which we won't get into, but to the point where Marvel was like, you know what? We need to not have you. So let's completely steer the ship in a different direction. Right. Because Kang was supposed to be the Thanos character. He was going to be the big guy. He was going to be the main villain through the next several movies. All of a sudden, they had to pivot completely, which then, of course, brings us to Comic-Con, where Doctor Doom, for those who don't know, is the Fantastic Four. That's the bad guy. That is the Lex Luthor to Superman. That is the Joker to Batman. That is the bad guy for the Fantastic Four. One of the major Marvel villains in all of Marvel Comics. They pivot to Doctor Doom, and of course, who walks out? But Tony Stark, or Robert Downey Jr. So now, I guess, Steve, the question for you is, does this mean he will be playing Doctor Doom as Victor Von Doom, a completely separate character in the Marvel Universe? Or is there some sort of comic correlation between Tony Stark and Doctor Doom that we don't know about, that we may see coming?
I'm surprised that we haven't gotten Looper videos and listicle articles about why this version of Doctor Doom is the best version ever.
Well, it can't be worse than the movies we've had.
And
before.
How much people love that particular what if story, or that this is something that is, by and large, it's pretty unprecedented.
Right.
There's one story in all of Marvel Comics that I have found that was from a different Earth, where basically Tony takes over the mantle of Doctor Doom. That he is, due to some instances in college, that Tony ends up being Doctor Doom rather than Iron Man. Okay. There was a situation more recently, circa 2016, 17-ish, where Doctor Doom, Tony Stark, had apparently died, and Doctor Doom took up the mantle of Iron Man and called himself Iron Man. And he was in Doom armor, but he was trying to basically be reformed and be a hero. And so he took on the role of Iron Man. Much like Dr. Octopus ended up being the superior Spider-Man for a while, but that's neither here nor there. so that is the closest correlation you can get to anything that's taken place in the comics. This is obviously multiverse stuff. This is obviously, so the question really for me is Tony Stark, is Robert Downey Jr. playing Tony Stark, who calls himself Dr. Doom? Is Robert Downey Jr. playing Dr. Victor Von Doom, who just happens to look like Tony Stark from the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Ultimately, and again, not to be a Debbie Downer on things, it's crazy because when I watch that clip and I see him take that mask off, there was like in my heart, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And literally in the middle of telling myself it's amazing, I'm like, that's really weird. They must be really desperate. To me, it shows how desperate they are to get some recognition back into the brand. Since Endgame, you ran the list down, David. It hasn't been the home run derby for the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Right.
And so I think this is them trying to inject a little life into what's going on because everyone loves RDJ. And, they know creatively what they're doing and we don't, but I feel like it's just a multiverse kind of thing. I think that's how it's going to end up being explained, or it's going to be a head fake. And they've got another casting for Dr. Doom, but that was just kind of the way of sneaking Tony Stark back into the mix. Like, because if you notice, he took the mask off and he stood there posed all serious, but then he threw the sunglasses on.
Right.
And so I'm wondering if what you have here is we're not looking at the casting of Dr. Doom. We're looking at the return of Tony Stark, thanks to whatever's happening in this thing. Because I think that I think one of the things they may be realizing creatively, and even Robert Downey Jr. is realizing, because he was I think he was on Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan said, "Now you're coming back, right? Everyone always comes back in the comics." And Robert Downey Jr. said, "Do you really want to see that? After all I've done, do you really want to see me do it?" And Joe Rogan's like, "Take my money." Yeah. Everyone wants to see you do that again, Right. And I think he's kind of realized, like, I shouldn't have stepped away from this, not just because it's the money train, but because it's one of those things that he embodies for life. Like, and then I also think from the creative standpoint, they're like, we made a mistake by killing all these guys off or aging them to the point that they cannot be a superhero anymore, Captain America.
Right.
It seemed like everyone was getting a happy ending. It seemed like everyone was getting closure, fans and the characters alike. But at the end of the day, what was happening was, just like with not recasting Black Panther, I feel like it was a mistake to not go the route of recasting rather than let's just write these characters out altogether.
Right.
Because comics and superheroes are perpetually young. They're perpetually moving forward. Comics are perpetually in act 2. And though cinematically we can get the final acts of these stories, it's okay to move on and have someone new step in those shoes. It's been done with James Bond for years to varying degrees of success, but ultimately that character has maintained and stayed the test of time regardless of who's playing him, because the character works. And as long as they do things where the character works, they're smart enough with casting. They can cast well. And obviously everyone will, if they were to recast, had they recast Iron Man, everyone would have always compared everyone to Robert Downey Jr.
Right.
He would have been the Sean Connery of Iron Man. Same thing with Chris Evans as Captain America, and then Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther. But as you look at it, the only people they've recast ever in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is Rhodey, when Terrence Howard left after Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2, here comes Don Cheadle. And now Harrison Ford taking over William Hurt's role as Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross.
Because William Hurt passed away. So
William Hurt passed away.
Yeah. Oh, well.
So it's this thing. It's like, I know you want to honor the actors, but you also have characters that are still viable and can still work if you'll do it, because what they've tried to do isn't working.
Well, I think in fairness, Chris Evans, I think didn't want to do it anymore. I think he was done. And honestly, I think you could have paid him an exorbitant amount of money, and I don't think he would have taken it up, because he knows he's rich. He can pretty much write his own check. He can direct, do whatever he wants to. And I think that's what he wants to do. So I think he's done regardless. He may have a cameo here and there. Robert Downey Jr. is interesting because I think that he, of course, he's had the up and down background, in his career. He's had some great highs and some very low lows. He's got his Oscar.
Mhm.
He's a beloved actor. People love him. And I think I don't want to say he's smart enough to know, because this may not be the right decision for everybody, but for him, I think he's like, I've got my Oscar. I've got my prestige pictures. I love doing this character. I'm going to do it. Why not? Because people love me doing it, and I'm just going to have fun with this, because he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He doesn't need the money. He can do whatever he wants to. And I don't think he would do something that would tarnish his character. I don't think he would do something that he thinks would tarnish the character of Tony Stark. I don't think he would do
well, no, that's his landmark character.
Exactly.
And
I think he respects
I've only
the
even
character
seen
enough.
one of them. And the Avengers.
Which, by the way, Jen saw Iron Man, and the most unlikely thing about the entire movie for her was Gwyneth running in those high heels. Just, it would not happen.
Pepper Potts would snap an ankle or a heel on that floor. The most unbelievable part of that entire movie.
When she's going to get to Section 7 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's impossible.
We're setting up something where Jen's going to watch all the MCU movies one at a time. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, also, you're not wearing 5-inch heels in that situation. Okay. Like we're gonna be smart, and we're gonna put on flats before we go to this. Like,
now, is that more egregious than Bryce Dallas Howard running from a T-Rex in high heels?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think maybe. You know what? Honestly, if it's a T-Rex, you're just kicking off the heels and you're just going straight for it. Like
Bryce Dallas Howard didn't. Yeah, she didn't.
No, she didn't either.
Right. Yeah.
And that was also unbelievable. I really it's crimes against fashion, and it's impossible. Yeah. So like that was totally unbelievable. Don't get me started on Hulk yet, because that's my.
I'm sorry. Have you
seen
the Hulk?
Yeah. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
I watched it 2 weeks ago for the first time, the one with Liv Tyler and Edward Norton.
Yeah.
We're going to set up a Patreon soon where Jen watches all the Marvel movies, and we talk about them one at a time, just kind of in order, because Iron Man 2 is next. And then we'll get to 3 and Thor, and we'll get to Avengers or whatever, and kind of run through what I call the Jenn-C-U, and kind of get her take, and we'll review the movies and stuff. So we're going to.
I'm really concerned though about what you said. Don't get me started on the Hulk, because you're killing me over here. He's my guy.
It wasn't about the Hulk particularly. It's about the fact that he really wouldn't be wearing pants. You're not telling me.
That's a conundrum that's Hulk.
But that's been a thing. That's one of those things you got to suspend disbelief and just roll with it.
Yeah,
because they tried to do no pants Hulk back in 2003, and it was uncomfortable for everybody.
Right.
Well, I mean, that would be uncomfortable, to be fair.
Well, with the Avengers, remember when he changed out of Hulk and he went crashing down into the warehouse or whatever? Like there's Harry Dean Stanton finding him, and he's like, "Come flying through space, bare butt naked," and so he commented on the fact that you lost your pants, and here you go. So,
I don't know. I have notes on both of them so that I don't.
We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. But back to RDJ, and this is my theory too. One of two things will happen: either they will put so much makeup on him that he will be unrecognizable as Robert Downey Jr. as he becomes Victor Von Doom, or as I think you mentioned, he will be Tony Stark in a different multiverse, different Earth 9445 or whatever, and they'll bring him in somehow to the fold where he is Tony Stark as Dr. Doom. Or they just do Tony Stark as we know him as Dr. Doom, and that whole story plays out in an unusual way, which the Russo brothers are returning, which they're the ones that directed the Captain America movies. They're the ones that directed the Avengers films, and at first we didn't know they were coming back, but now they are, and I'm actually fairly excited they're coming back, because I feel like they seem to handle this product and these characters. They know what to do with these characters. We'll see. We'll see. Jen, any thoughts, any questions, any on any of this? I know it's a lot of nerddom.
Having not seen all of the MCU, I've seen the Avengers, seen the Guardians, except for number 3. And now the first 2 that started everything, the multiverse still confuses me. I'm not sure where all of that comes in. Yeah, I mean, and I guess I did enjoy the first Doctor Strange. I haven't seen the second one yet. Yes. So it'll be like I kind of know what's going on, but I think just as a casual watcher, I hope they can bring it back to be less confusing, I guess. Because so far I'm following.
So have you seen all the Avengers movies?
I've seen all the Avengers. Yes.
Okay, so in the last Avengers in Endgame,
Mm-hmm.
when they're getting all the stones throughout time and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and Hulk's talking to the Ancient One, the
Mm-hmm.
bald lady, about it, and she gives him the whole thing. She's like, if you don't bring this stone back to this, it's going to cause it's going to cause things to branch off and start a whole new timeline, that you're going to disrupt time and
Yeah.
and so what she's saying is their actions could create a whole other universe. Did you see did you ever see the Back to the Future trilogy?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So in Back to the Future 2,
Yes.
Biff steals the almanac, and he goes to the future and goes to the past.
Yeah.
And Doc explains it's like this timeline skewed off. And
Right.
so they've got to go all the way back to 1955 to stop. They can't just go back in time and undo, or can't go forward in time and get it. They have to, because they've gone into a whole new parallel universe. And that's what the multiverse is. It's
Okay.
it's branches upon branches based on different choices and everything. And one of the things they tried to establish in some of the television shows is that one of the bad guy who was meant to be the bad guy that David mentioned was
Yeah.
trying to hold everything to one, what he called the sacred timeline.
Okay.
And and so and when he dies, everything goes nuts, and you branch off in all these different multiverses. So when you get to I guess the first place we're really exposed to it is in the Marvel Cinematic Universe proper. I guess Multiverse of Madness came out before No Way Home. And so I guess
I think
properly
so.
we were only we were first really truly exposed to it in Doctor Strange. And because they jumped through all the different universes, but then it really gets played out in a logistical way in Spider-Man No Way Home, with the appearance of the previous Spider-Man who show up.
Right.
So it's it's a concept that it can sometimes help in storytelling, but a lot of times it becomes a crutch for storytellers.
In theory, and to what you just said, in theory, for the movies, it works. It would work because you now have the freedom to be able to do whatever you want to tell the story you want, because you can just pull certain character from a certain universe and figure out a way to get them into this one that you're working with.
Right.
However, again, it became way too much, way too expensive, and people were tuning out going, number one, my favorite characters, Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, Thor, those guys are now gone. Number two, I don't understand what we're doing here. What's happening with this? I watched Loki, watched the TVA now, whatever. And ironically, Deadpool and Wolverine actually makes sense of the multiverse, to the point where there's even a breaking the fourth wall where Deadpool says to the camera, Marvel tried this multiverse stuff and it didn't work. I mean, he actually makes a joke about how it's not working. And so, and a lot of the Deadpool Wolverine actually does work with the concept of the multiverse. And that's where a lot of I'm not going to say what the cameos are for people who haven't seen it, but a lot of the cameos are coming in because of this multiverse idea. But it turns it more into I don't want to say a joke, but it makes it a lighthearted, oh yeah, we just do this, this, and this. And Deadpool himself was even confused by like, how are we doing these things with all these universes and stuff? And so I kind of feel like that kind of brings it, I don't want to say to a close, but kind of brings it home for a lot of people of like, okay, I see what we're doing here, kind of thing. And, they'll go forward from there.
The Spider-Man animated films kind of help out with that too. Into the Spider-Verse and
those are excellent movies.
Yeah, they do a good job.
They're so good
of kind of paring it down. And
Jen, you'd like those. I think you'd like both of those.
I probably would. My last Spider-Man movie was in the 90s with Kirsten Dunst. Or was that early 2000s?
That was
so
early.
You haven't seen any of the new Spider-Mans, have you?
Yeah.
Oh, we got a lot of work to do. We'll get there. We will get there. We will get there.
And I'll take notes and I will critique every fashion choice.
Steve, any final thoughts on 4 and Downey Jr. and all that, all the stuff we've talked about as we kind of bring this to a close here?
Yeah, I'm like you. I'm very cautiously optimistic about it. I keep telling people in my private life that, I don't know that I'll ever get in my lifetime a great Fantastic Four movie, and I hope this proves me wrong. I hope that I come away from this feeling like I have spent time with the people that I used to love to see in the pages of the comic books. I've got very strong opinions about a lot of things when it comes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe and what's been done, but ultimately, there's so much good. They built up a lot of goodwill in those first 11 years, and I'm willing to turn a blind eye to some things and just ignore some things and be content to not watch some things
Right.
and just really enjoy what's been really good and focus on that more than anything else. And so we'll see. Well, I'm like
Mhm.
you. The Russos coming in to me, that's more hopeful than Robert Downey Jr.
Right.
in a Doctor Doom costume or the
Right.
Russos coming in because for
Mhm.
whatever reason they seem to get it, and Feige seems to work well with them and as far as what he does. And I was thinking about this morning. We had our I have a men's Bible study in the morning. We're recording this, and so as I'm driving home, I'm thinking I got to do this show, and I was just thinking about the fact we always seem to forget that, Jen, the movies you've watched had nothing to do with Disney.
Right.
Yeah.
The
No.
Mhm.
Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk, that was a Paramount film and a Universal film,
Mhm.
respectively. And what was unique was at the end of Hulk, Robert Downey Jr. shows up as Tony Stark talking to General
Yeah.
Thunderbolt Ross. And this was something that was absolutely new in the span of cinema. And Marvel Studios started doing this thing before the Disney buyout of Marvel. And it was the
I
power of
wondered.
and it was
Mhm.
the power of Disney really that has allowed them to continue to do this and pull it off, I think, to the extent they were able to all the way into Endgame.
Right.
Um, and with all the different characters that were able to be brought in and everything. So I don't know. I'm interested to see where we go. I'm interested to see what happens with the Wolverine, with the X-Men. Yeah, there's just a lot of opportunity, and a lot of things that could
Mhm.
go on. It makes more sense that the X-Men have been in hiding all this time than it does the Fantastic Four.
Right.
So, it'll
Oh, we haven't even talked about the X-Men today. I forgot about
right,
that.
right.
So that's a whole different subject.
Wolverine may bring them all out of hiding, may bring Charles Xavier to the forefront. Who knows?
Mhm.
We shall see, and it'll be an interesting ride, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited about the X-Men too, because again, before they owned Fox, they couldn't say X-Men. They had to say like Inhuman, is what they
Right.
would say. Well, because they really couldn't say the word mutant as it leading to the X-Men because it was copyrighted by Fox, but now they own Fox, so they can say all they want. And of course, we'll see Fantastic Four, and then I think the X-Men will get pulled in as well, and which I'm excited about too to see how that does. And real quick, the casting for Fantastic Four, which came out, Pedro Pascal, which is the Mandalorian, who's in
Mhm.
everything right now, Vanessa Kirby, which I wasn't sure about this, but the more I thought about it, the more I like it. She's in The Queen. She's in she's been in a bunch of other things as well. A guy named Joseph Quinn, who is fairly new to the scene, I think. He was also with Lupita Nyong'o in the recent Quiet Place Day One. He was one of the leads in that movie. Um, and then a guy named Iban Moss Backrack, which I don't know him. He's playing the Thing.
He's from The
Um,
Bear.
Okay, The Bear. That's a very popular TV show which I have not
Oh
watched,
yeah.
but he's in The Bear. But yeah, that's your casting. Which I don't want to say it's a strange casting. It's somewhat of an odd casting, I guess, because it's four people you didn't really put together. I did not put Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards. I was fine not doing John Krasinski because everybody wanted Krasinski and Emily Blunt to be Mr. Fantastic and Sue Storm. That would have been amazing,
Mhm.
but I'm fine with not doing it because I almost feel like that's just too much fan service. We got our John Krasinski as Fantastic Four, as Reed Richards in Multiverse of Madness, and Jen, will be interesting when you see that because there's a lot to that
Yeah.
movie. But yeah,
There is
I
a
feel like I
lot.
have to watch more of the rest of it before I would understand.
yeah, oh yeah, we'll get there. You're like 24 movies away from that right now, so you're good. You got time.
Yeah.
Jen, any thoughts for you? Any thoughts or questions or any just like um any fashion
Uh,
tips?
I guess don't wear 5-inch heels if you're running from the bad guy. I mean, that's
That's
fine. I mean,
that's
that's
probably
just good
good.
advice for us all. I
Yeah,
feel like.
that's
Flats.
I'm
But
writing
the
that
thing
down.
is,
So.
you saw her do it, so she's obviously able to do it.
Well, listen, I can run in 5-inch heels too. That's not a problem, but I can't run on that corrugated or whatever, that metal floor with the
Oh
little
yeah,
holes
yeah,
in it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
That's what that was like.
See,
The
that's
heel's
why.
gonna get caught in the hole, and
yeah.
that's what's snapping the heel of the ankle. You can run in heels.
Well,
See,
just
that's why I think it's probably harder for her to do that than it is Jessica Chastain in the Jurassic World movie because she's running on on ground, even if it's just dirt roads or whatever. She's running on
That's
on
easy. That's
ground.
why it's more
Yeah,
egregious for
yeah,
Pepper
okay.
Potts because
see.
of the
I see what you're
flooring.
saying. Where she was
yes,
okay. I see what
yeah.
you're
It's a
saying there with
flooring.
that.
Steve,
Okay.
take notes. Take
Yeah,
notes.
Yeah.
I am. I am. I'm really anxious to hear what you have to say when Scarlett Johansson shows up in Iron Man 2, and and how that all goes down. So
in a suit so tight she can barely move, and yet she's
That's right.
flipping all over the place. And so,
The
yeah,
I've always had
gratuitous-
questions about that, but I do
the
like.
gratuitous walking up the stairs shot and all that good stuff. So
yeah.
Well, don't worry. If there's a fashion faux pas, I'll find it.
Well, Iron Man 2 was also made before a lot of things in Hollywood shifted to where, like, hey, let's not be so gratuitous about how much we ogle our characters, in tight suits. And so, anyway, on that note, Steve, Gulliverse, Geek Out Loud, when's our next episode? Where can we find you? Where can we hunt you down?
There's a new episode coming out very, very soon. There's some things going on with it in the editing that have to be done, but we're in the midst still of our March Madness here we're in August. Yeah. Counting down the or doing tournaments of the greatest movie score of all time. So we've got a long ways to go still with that, but that's coming out very, very soon. Check it out, geekoutpodcast.com. I'm on Instagram at Real Geek Out Loud. A lot of Marvel toys. It's what my Instagram is at Real Geek Out Loud. And then, of course, doing YouTube, even with some mediocre action figure photography at YouTube right now. So check that out.
Always fun.
Out Loud on YouTube. Yeah.
Always fun.
Awesome.
Folks out there who need their geekness, whatever, Geek Out Loud is fun. His whole persona is fun. It's family friendly. It's really funny. It's never mean. It's always just a good time. So it's always fun to listen to Steve. Jenn, where can we find you? You don't have any trips coming up anytime soon, right? You're not leaving for like 2
not for a
weeks or
couple
3
weeks.
or
Yeah, like
couple
another
weeks?
couple another couple weeks. At Upon a Star Jen is where I'll post all my travel stuff. Yeah.
Perfect. Find me on Instagram, The Magic on a Dollar. And of course, I'm also a co-host of the Deucecast movie show, which Steve will be a part of this weekend, coming out next week, which, as you hear this episode in particular, we'll be talking about sci-fi and fantasy films, our favorite top 10.
That's right.
So that'll be,
Oh,
I do my list pretty much like an hour before. So yeah, that'll be a good time, which probably will run well into the night, because once Steve gets going, we just let him roll.
I've only got about 15 minutes.
That's true. That's true. We'll get you on 15 minutes, which turns into about 3 hours. So, anyway, of course, find our agency, Upon a Star Travel, at all the usual places and stuff, and on TikTok and Instagram and X Twitter and all that good stuff. And of course, find us at the mscpodcast@gmail.com. That's our email address. We'd love to hear from you. Go on and I can speak for Steve being a podcaster as well. One of the best things you can do is go on whatever you find your podcast, Spotify or iTunes or iHeart or Stitcher or wherever, rate, review, leave a review. Just leave a quick few words. Hey, love the podcast, love the show. 1 star, 5 stars. We all love 5 stars, but the 1-star reviews are always funny too. But yeah, 5 stars is the best number of stars, but that also helps the show get seen, helps the show get noticed, helps it get out there as well. So yeah, make sure you do that when you have a chance. And Steve, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. I'm
Thanks,
sorry
Steve.
to go too geeky and I saw everyone's faces glaze over, but I couldn't help it.
No, it's perfect, because this is stuff that, I mean, some of our geek audience might listen to, but people who like Jenn, who are the casual fans, it kind of gives some insight as to where Marvel.
No, I learned
may
a
be
lot,
going with some of
actually,
this.
especially about the multiverse. It makes more sense.
And in
now,
2027,
so
when she's watching Secret Wars, she'll be like, "That's what Steve was talking about right there. I see it. Earth 616," and her husband will be like,
So I have
"What
to
are you
get
talking about?"
I have to get caught up before that comes out, whenever
Yeah.
that's gonna be.
Oh,
so.
we'll get there. We'll get there.
Time
So
and a
for
half.
Steve,
Yeah, you got plenty of time.
Playtime?
for
Okay,
Steve-
that's good.
for Steve, for Jenn, I'm David. Hey, don't forget to thank your Phoenicians.
Thank you for listening to the Main Street Electrical Podcast. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at the MSE Podcast, or visit our website at themsepodcast.com. Be sure to subscribe, and may all your wishes come true.